24 hours before Alex Bregman agreed to terms with the Boston Red Sox, I wasn't sure if the Cubs were or weren't going to get him. The priority for him is length of contract. Had they gone to 5 a few days earlier, I really do wonder if we're having this conversation.
All right, so Jeff Passan, Alex Bregman, I thought your tweet was interesting because it seemed to throw a little bit of shade in response to what Buster Olney had put out there when you mentioned that the Cubs, despite the fact that Jed Hoyer yesterday was thanking Tom Ricketts for giving them the ability to spend money that they actually weren't spending. I found that interesting, and you pointed out that the Cubs finishing with 4 years at $120 million, which was also not the highest AAV. You said, it's tough to win a free agent bidding war when you finish third in multiple of the most key aspects of a contract. So just lay out your thoughts about what happened, Alex Bregman deciding to sign with the Boston Red Sox.
Well, it's super awesome if an owner wants to be like the Toronto Blue Jays and give just enough money to be in it, but not enough to win it. That's where the Cubs are right now. And I think it's an indictment on the team. And I don't know if it's Tom Ricketts. I don't know if it's Craig Kenny. I don't know who it is. What I do know is that the Chicago Cubs really, really could have used a player like Alex Bregman. And now I'm in Fort Myers, Florida, getting ready to talk with him tomorrow.
Ooh.
He's not out in Mesa. He is not playing third base. He is not batting second in the Cubs lineup. He's not doing any of the things he could and, frankly, maybe should have been doing. And I'll be honest, guys, there are a few transactions that happen that really take me by surprise, right? I usually have a pretty decent sense of what's going on. And 24 hours before Alex Bregman agreed to terms with the Boston Red Sox, I wasn't sure if the Cubs were or weren't going to get him, but I thought it was either them or Detroit. And part of that was because Bregman the whole time had been talking about how the priority for him is length of contract. And the Cubs, they started off in the 3-year range, and then they had bumped it up to 4. And I think the question a lot of people were asking is, are they going to go to 5? Are they going to add that extra year? And had they gone to 5 a few days earlier, I really do wonder if we're having this conversation in a completely different tone, where it's like, oh my God, the Cubs did it. They got Alex Bregman, and they did so because they were aggressive. But being aggressive with free agents and being able to put forth the sort of offers that are going to lock down a player, it is not something that the Cubs, this incarnation of them, do anymore.
They weren't bidding, obviously, against the Dodgers or the Mets. Is that maybe the greatest indictment, Jeff? Because this is the third largest market. I believe they're third in revenue, but yet their salary spend is nowhere close to third.
Yeah, and the Red Sox guys have been accused of very similar things to the Cubs in recent years, of questionable spending in terms of, like, why are you not spending more? And I'm not going to sit here and say that the Cubs don't spend money. They do. Like, they're over $200 million in salary. It's 2x what some teams are. But like you said, they are in Chicago. They sell out Wrigley all the time. They own the damn area now. Yep. I mean, everything that they have done has been to grow this business to the point where they can go out and spend. Whether they choose to is the question that fans need to be asking right now. And that's, all of this is trained on the people who hold the purse strings. I think the Cubs baseball operations department, honestly, has done a pretty damn good job this offseason getting talent in there when, frankly, they didn't have a whole lot of money to work with. And so to go out and get Kyle Tucker was, I understand, with Paredes and Cam Smith, like they gave up a pretty fair bit in talent, but they got a player in Kyle Tucker who I think is probably going to be one of the 10 best in baseball this year. So that the offseason, when you get a guy like that, is a win. But like, where's the money that they were supposed to reallocate from Cody Bellinger?
Mm-hmm. Is this
when you sign a guy like Bellinger to a contract the length and size that you do, and you move him in what is essentially a money dump, you better turn around and spend that money if you want to be taken seriously by the fans. But that's the thing, guys. I'm not sure that is a priority with the Cubs, and I really do wonder. It's hard to quantify this, but I really do wonder how much of this is they're going to either sell out or come close to selling out Wrigley every day, regardless of how good the team is. So what's the incentive and motivation beyond inherent competitiveness to go and chase those rings, to go and chase playoff spots? Is it as simple as there are 12 playoff spots now in baseball, and we feel like even with this team, we're going to be one of the 6 best in the league? Potentially. And in the division that is the National League Central right now, I could very much see that being the case. But, man, another player, another impact player would just make such a difference on this team. And it seems penny-wise and pound ridiculous to be doing what they're doing.
Is this foreshadowing for how you believe they'll handle trying to make sure that Tucker would be part of the organization going forward after 2025?
For the Cubs' sake, I hope not. I mean, they have a year to sell the guy. And I think there's some lessons to be learned from Juan Soto, right? You need to do everything you can to make him as comfortable and welcome and feeling like he is not just part of the 2025 season, but part of 2026 and beyond. You need to do that as much as possible, because at the end of the day, money is going to mean just about everything. And that's something you might not win. And if it's really close, then those factors that you put time into during the season, that you put effort into during the season, maybe that's the tiebreaker. And maybe that's why he sticks around.
Jeff Passan joining us here on Waddle and Silvy, Meller and for Silvy today on ESPN 1000. Jeff, so you said that, had the Cubs maybe been willing to go to 5 years a few days earlier, they might have been able to seal the deal with Alex Bregman. It seems like Jed Hoyer obviously really did want to try and secure his services. Otherwise, why would you have even made the contract offer? So they identified him as somebody they wanted on this roster. But I'm wondering, how much of this is Jed trying to navigate, his financial limitations with Tom Ricketts maybe seeing an expiring CBA deal in 2026, and Ricketts being reluctant to, extend any big contracts past into a CBA that they have, they don't know what it's going to look like ultimately.
I guess, but what's the point in trying to be competitive now, period, if you're just going to do half measures?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it feels like the Breaking Bad episode, no more half measures. And this was a half measure of an off season. And I mean, if not for Tucker, it would have been a nightmare. So at least they got that part down. But all 30 teams, guys, are in the same position when it comes to the collective bargaining agreement. You don't know what it's going to look like after it expires in the winter of next year and bleeds into 2027, and potentially we lose games in 2027 because of a lockout. And beyond that, there's not going to be a salary cap unless something drastic changes. But there are probably going to be different rules when it comes to spending and when it comes to how rosters are put together, and you need to adjust to that on the fly. I just have a difficult time when a vast majority of other teams are operating in a different way than the Cubs, particularly their peers who do have resources, in thinking that the Cubs are special and that they deserve excuses, because there is no excuse for this. Like, the point of this whole thing, guys, is to win. And I think a deal like the one Alex Bregman signed, I think it's a winning deal for the team. And I think he is a winning player, and culturally just would have been enormous in that clubhouse and what he brings.
It just feels like the behavior was also inspired by the Pacoda projection that the Cubs are going to finish well above everybody else in the National League Central. And as you mentioned, Jeff, that's good enough for them because that means they'll be in the postseason.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I don't discount that an 85-win Cubs team can win the World Series. It is absolutely possible. Baseball is a beautiful sport like that, where you don't need to be the best regular season team to go out and get a ring. But I'll tell you, it sure helps, because if you win 95 games during the regular season as opposed to 85, it probably means that 95-win team is a lot more talented than the 85-win team. It's not always the case. There's some weird years where teams hit extraordinarily well in scoring position or have a phenomenal bullpen that papers over some other weaknesses. But a majority of the time, that team with 10 more wins is going to be more talented and thus likelier to go on a run in October.